Do you think the British taxpayer has a right to ask serious questions about how an unelected Prime Minister could potentially give away £1 million of taxpayers' cash for some big green agenda?
Well, I certainly hope Rishi Sunak is not actually taking this £1 trillion claim seriously. It's a bit of a political stunt. But I think the point that you made earlier about doing it when times are rosy is a really, really important one. Rishi Sunak is facing a really tough in-tray. We've got a historically high tax burden, and at the same time we've got public services which are struggling, and to think that he would be spending any spare cash and any spare change that he can find on something like climate adaptation, on £90 million to help the Congo Basin, just seems completely preposterous.
Yeah, I mean, look, what about people that are right here? I mean, with absolute respect, you know, Dorothy in Whitehaven, who's struggling to heat her home or is absolutely apoplectic with worry about the fact that maybe a business shut down during a lockdown that Rishi Sunak seemed to back as well, and a large part is now to blame for our financial woes. But it'll be a relief to Dorothy in Whitehaven here, who maybe voted Tory at the last election, that the people of the Congo Basin will have a bit more cash.
Well, exactly, and your colleague Tom Harwood made the point earlier on Politics Live that the UK has done more to cut CO2 emissions in the last 30 years than any other country. So the British people, I think they feel like they're really, really doing their part, and they have done their part. And to think that they're now going to have to be spending billions of pounds, potentially billions of pounds, I mean, the government has said it's committed to the £11.5 billion it's pledged for climate science, just seems completely absurd, and it's money that would be better used towards tax cuts and funding our public services.
Yeah, 100%. Since you mentioned Tom Harwood there, I'll just bring him back up, actually, because he did make a fantastic point. I'm just going to make it now. So the SNP block new nuclear, the Tories block onshore wind, Labour blocks shale gas, the Greens block solar farms, and the Lib Dems block just about anything being built anywhere. He is making the point, as I think most people would have to agree with, which is this is contributing to Britain now being in decline. And then when you look at the fact that on top of all of this, supposedly £1 million is going to go overseas again, it's starting to look like our politicians actually really don't like this country.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because actually where Britain could really contribute to helping to deal with climate change would be in innovation and in technology. And that's exactly the sorts of areas where we're a very innovative country, and we could be taking steps to produce the technological solutions that actually would really, really help countries around the world, much more than a 50 million here, 100 million there.
But this is the thing, and I've been asking our public a lot this show, gbviews at gbnews.uk, get those views coming in. When you look at this kind of expenditure on these kind of policies that are designed predominantly to have an effect elsewhere, not domestically, is this referendum territory for the taxpayers? Should taxpayers, I know, the sigh that greets any kind of referendum topic, but I wonder whether or not all of the painstaking things that would go into a referendum, is it worth it? Because so often the Taxpayers Alliance, do taxpayers not have a right to have a vote on this amount of expenditure?
Well, I think you're absolutely right that we need a national conversation, and we need a conversation which takes into account the interests of taxpayers far, far more than it currently does. That's something that we try to do. But as for referendum territory, I don't think that's for us to talk about, really.
You don't really? And this does appear to be a big waste of taxpayers' money, potentially, I suppose. Do you sympathise with people who say that actually charity should start at home?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And listen, particularly at a time when, you know, taxpayers are already facing, whether it's a hike in alcohol duty, an increase in corporation tax, the scrapping of the income tax cut. People are already really struggling. Inflation is through the roof. We're looking at a potential freezing of income tax thresholds. That's going to cause enormous damage to people over the next couple of years. And if they're told that part of that is being used to fund the development or conservation in the Congo Basin, I think that really takes a biscuit.
Yeah, indeed. I keep banging on about this, but some of it apparently to Pakistan. I understand terrible flooding over there, obviously shocking flooding over there. But then at the same time, they have got a nuclear weapons programme, for example. That doesn't just happen. That takes a fair bit of cash. 80 million quid, supposedly, on something slightly different to the climate, to lob over to the French to, as far as I can tell, not really patrol the channel. I can't help but feel as though taxpayers are getting a rum deal, which is why it's good to have people like yourself in their corner fighting for them.